In my experience, the bigger the artist, the bigger the personality, the more humility you encounter, the more spirit of equalness and incredible humanity.
I'm Zsolt Bognar, and this is Living the Creative Life. Our guest today is Conductor Boian Videnoff. Boian, thank you so much for being on the series. It's a pleasure to meet you, finally.
It's my pleasure to meet you.
So tell me a little bit about your name, because I believe it's Bulgarian and you grew up in Italy, so what's the story?
Yeah, the name is totally Bulgarian, Boian Videnoff, but I grew up in Italy first, the first 6.5 years of my life, and then we moved to Germany. I remember when I was a kid, I had a real identity problem. I did not know what am I. And I felt ashamed to speak Bulgarian with my parents when we were outside and they would start talking to me in Bulgarian. I said, don't speak in Bulgarian, speak in German. We're in Germany. Or when we're in Italy, parlate in Italiano. Don't speak to me in other language. So I really felt like I don't belong anywhere as a kid. Very difficult. And then over time, those kind of personalities came together, and now I accept for what I am, and I'm actually happy that it came all together. I consider myself Italian-German with Slavic roots, who grew up on a German-French border, and therefore France is not very far conceptually from me. So I think this totally reflects also my interests in music. I am very much connected to the German music, German Romantic, but also I'm very interested in the historical informed way, although not exaggerating it too much. At the same time, coming from a singer's family where singing has been part very much of my life, and I also studied with my dad singing, I love singing and that reverb that it creates in the body. And so opera, the dramaturgic element of opera, it's super interesting. It's something that I can't miss in my life. And then, of course, having, the Slavic part, Tchaikovsky, but then even Stravinsky, Prokofiev, all of those composers are very close to some part of me. And French music is something that I always have an interesting relationship with because I studied with many French kids in school. So I know it, but it's always a relationship of appreciation from a bit further away. So it's a bit more far away from me, but at the same time, huge love for it. Yeah. And so these are the cultures that really have been in me.
You come from a musical family. Is that why you moved to Germany?
I'm born in 87 and 88. The family escaped to Italy, and they had friends who helped them, settle in. But the funny and crazy part of all of this story is that they moved to Italy. Although they had been working in Italy before in the 70s, the moment they moved to Italy didn't give them a permit to work. So my mom was teaching on black violin, and my father could not sing anymore, although 10 years before that he would sing in La Scala and all the big theaters. So then difficult life, very difficult to build up again from zero. In Bulgaria they were really important, and in Italy then from zero again. And my dad started singing in France, in England, and a few years later, again the connection of the World Youth Orchestra, the conductor Marcello Viotti. He was a very good friend of our family. He was chief conductor in the radio orchestra in Saarbrücken, on the French border, and he called up my mom because he was also the conductor of this youth orchestra back then, many years ago in the 70s. And he told her, Dora, don't you want to apply? We're looking for a concertmaster. And without knowing German, she applied, and our family, she won as the first woman from the East concertmaster in Germany, and we moved to Germany.
I'm always curious to see how people find their musical path if the decision was yours.
Growing up in music, I know that I was imitating my dad as a kid, as every kid does. I picked up the violin when I was, I think, 3-4 years old already. I was fiddling around, and then I got violin lessons. So it was always present in my life. I know that I wanted to be also a tennis player or pilot at some point. Maybe one day I'll be a pilot, who knows? But still a passion of mine. My mom was dragging me to all rehearsals of the orchestra. So this kind of my musical education, I got it by listening to rehearsals and then afterwards analyzing with my mom. She would ask me, what didn't you like? And I would say, I liked it. And she said, no, but what didn't you like? And then we would really go into analysis. My mom is a prof for violin, so she really likes analyzing things. But in a way, that became my musical education. And in a way, also the education for the conductor, because listening to so many rehearsals in a way, having to analyze what I would have wanted differently in such an early stage of my development as a musician forced me to be very analytic in music, and that formed me as a personality. And I loved this idea of this incredible repertoire you have as a conductor, this amazing colors, this especially opera, of course, also. Then I felt, okay, if I do music, I want to do this. I practiced violin, and then later also picked up the piano because violin was too close to what my mom does, and I really wanted to move away from that. And so at some point I even played just jazz just to annoy her.
Really? Jazz?
Yes. For a few years I didn't touch classical.
A few years?
Yeah. And I used to play when I was, I think, 15, 16, I was playing in Hotel Mercure in Saarbrücken in the evenings, just piano bar, just for earning a few bucks extra. Was cool, was extra money, pocket money.
Would you say that you had, from what you describe, an easier approach to the path of music? When you were growing up, did you even have an image of what it meant to have a musical life?
I remember back then, and when I was speaking about maybe doing something else, yeah, sure, you can do, but you feel actually they wouldn't like it, right? So this is in a way your destiny is kind of predefined. On the other hand, of course, the amazing opportunities you have to learn and to really like soak it in from so early on, that's very, very useful. And everything I do nowadays, I catch myself so often in things that either I have picked up from my dad or from my mom, things that others pay money to go and study and learn it from them, and you get that from a child's age. Of course, that's amazing.
Do you feel like their experience as musicians, as performers, did that give you some certain strength in facing the psychology of performance? And
arrogance, I would say. I think my strongest experience was when I went to study to Gianluigi Gelmetti. I thought that the ocean is deep until my ankles. I really thought I am great. And I went, and I'm so grateful for this experience. I owe this man who unfortunately passed. I owe him everything in music, besides my parents, of course, because he really taught me, humility, and he taught me how deep actually the waters are. And the more talent you have, the more responsibility comes with it, and the more you need to build also the knowledge.
So you mentioned a certain arrogance. Maybe there could be some positive sides to having a certain strength to rise above any challenges.
I wouldn't connect it to the family, but definitely to the characters of your parents, right? My father was some person who, when he entered the room, he just owned it. He would be right away the center of attention, very artistic person, extreme personality, and I think a bit of that I have taken from him. And my mom is a very analytical person, and definitely in my work as a conductor, I have that quality.
The first I became aware of your music making was through your collaborations with Martha Argerich and Sergei Babayan. So speaking about character, what does that feel like when you're collaborating with such large personalities, the character, is that like, if we mentioned flying, is that like being the pilot or is that like being the co-pilot? Is it really collaboration or is it accompanying?
Total collaboration. I have to say the bigger the artist, in my experience, the bigger the artist, the bigger the personality, the more humility you encounter, the more spirit of equalness and incredible humanity. I feel extremely blessed that I had the chance to work with such artists until now, and that I may continue doing so. This is working with your idols from childhood. I literally remember I would sit in Misha's concert as a child and admiring him, and then one day being able to say that I did with him several concerti regularly. And this is wonderful. This is an incredible inspiration, and definitely also one of the reasons why I founded the Mannheim Philharmonic, because I wanted young people to have this inspiration, to play with their idols. This is so inspiring. And to actually see how much humility there is in these people, how they approach with what a seriousness they approach their work, and love and passion, devotion, dedication, and at the same time absolutely no arrogance.
So with, for example, your collaboration with Martha Argerich, when you first met her, you have this idolization that you mentioned, but does it ever get to a point where you feel like you can speak as musician colleagues as equals?
I think that happens through music. I can't not idolize her. When I meet her, I still am like, although we know each other well and we spent many dinners together and time, I still, of course, I'm in awe of her, right? And when I talk to her, I still have this incredible appreciation, and therefore sometimes it doesn't feel like I'm talking like to a buddy, right? But in music, this all disappears, and that's the most natural soul-to-soul communication, and this is the communication where you really feel, okay, we're now having a very sincere conversation, and that's what I appreciate so much. Being able to make music with those people there, it's totally uncensored in a way, and there's no barrier anymore. It's really soul with soul connection.
So for a general audience who doesn't know what a rehearsal looks like or what goes on there, what it's supposed to accomplish, you mentioned the musical communication. Is there also a lot of discussion through words about what the interpretation might be? Or do you just play through and sort of sense what's happening?
My teacher comes from operatic tradition. He was an incredible opera conductor. So I always felt like this is the right approach. You prepare the orchestra for all eventualities, and they are ready to follow, and they are ready to just be flexible partners. How much is the phrasing opening? Is it with the small accelerando? Is it with small ritardando? Does it have a change of color in the middle of the phrase? And all of this, if you're really well prepared, you will pick it up, and in your answer, pop, 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 you will make it very much fitting to what you heard from the artist, right? So this is something that I really work a lot on, and then words are not needed, in my opinion. Because if you're sensitive and you are, your antennas are like that, whatever you hear from your colleague, even if the first 20 bars might not be 100% matching, then right away it will match, because you will adjust to each other.
We're talking about preparing for all eventualities.
Yes.
But is the idea with rehearsal to the performance, is the performance trying to achieve very well what was prepared during the rehearsal, or is it something else?
I think we musicians often find our luckiest and happiest moments in rehearsal, because in rehearsal you can really sometimes achieve exactly what you're thinking in that moment, and you can really live it with everyone. So these are very often moments of big happiness in rehearsal that you can achieve. You can really like trim something to perfection. You can now stop again and do it again until everyone hears, yeah, that was it. So you need to have rehearsed all this kind of phrases in order to then have a very natural flow in the concert and be super spontaneous and open to do things differently and let the performance almost like improvisation in jazz in a way. You need it to be born there, and this is a completely different job than from in rehearsal. In rehearsal, you need to chase an idea, or at least an idea of perfection for that moment, and try to come as close as possible to it for that specific segment, let's say, so that you really can say, okay, this is ideally, and this is the next, and this is then, and so you really know the piece well. Everyone knows his role, and then in concert, it's a much more bigger thinking, bigger lines, bigger connections. I often, when I rehearse with my musicians, I tell them, look, you made a small ritardando here, and that forced us 34 bars later. It forced us a completely different timing because you just you did this, and then later the whole tempo of the second section is completely different only because you slowed down 2 notes in your transition before.
What about the young conducting students who might be listening to this conversation and they want to find themselves more or less in your footsteps in terms of what you achieved? Let's say there's a conservatory education. Is there a typical trajectory for what happens at that point?
I think I've been always, in a way, a bit of an enfant terrible. I always quite my own ideas how things should be done, and already from school I would, you tell me go that way, I'd go on purpose the other way. I don't think it's something to be necessarily an example. I think follow your heart. This is what I would say. Follow what you feel is right. When I was still young and looking where to study, I met many people, and then I met Gianluigi Gelmetti, and I fell in love with the way this man was treating music. And I knew he doesn't really teach besides in Siena, and just he was chief conductor in Rome and the opera and the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. And for me, it was clear I want to spend as much possible time with this man and learn from him. So I just felt like, okay, I'm going to study piano, but my interest is studying with this man conducting, and I don't care if I get a degree or not. I just, I was, for me, it always, paper doesn't matter anything for me. Also, in our orchestra, when you apply, I don't look at the resumes. I don't want to know with whom they studied, with whatever. I just listen to the people. And if I like the playing, they get invited. If I, they might have the best teacher ever, but if I feel like it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. If I would give an advice to young conductors, I guess I would give them the exact opposite advice of what I actually did. If you have no other way than doing what you feel like, then do that. Don't go in directions that feel unnatural to you.
Mm-hmm. But what about building an orchestra from 0 to 100? You're building...
Don't.
But you did. And it's building an entire institution.
If I can give an advice, don't. Because it is so much more than one thinks when one starts it. And thanks God. Because when you are... I was 23 when I founded the Mannheim Philharmonic, and my goal was just for young musicians who many colleagues were doing a lot of auditions or actually not even getting invited. But if they were invited, they would not pass the first round. And I myself, I was unexperienced, and I thought, you guys need experience, I need experience. Let's create an orchestra. We all get experience, and hopefully we'll succeed. So this is how it all started. And very naively, I thought, well, if you're to be invited, we cannot call it youth orchestra. We should give it a serious name. So we call it Mannheim Philharmonic. That's serious. And this is how it all started. And I did not realize that means I need to understand bookkeeping. I need to understand, fundraising. I need to understand so many things that were totally out of my competence and knowledge. Especially when you start something like that, at that times we were just 2-3 people and my family was helping. I remember my dad had a Chrysler Voyager at that time, and he just took out all the seats and we were putting all the timpani in this Chrysler Voyager, and I was driving double basses in a Mercedes A-Class. Back then I had a car like that, and I was really driving from one place to the other 3-4 times for 4 basses, right? Because only one bass would fit in the car. All of this is an experience that forms you as a personality, and one can argue spend more time with scores instead of doing that. But if you can't otherwise, then do that.
Is there a way that we can, within these sometimes frantically busy lives, can we ensure that we are growing artistically?
It's a good question. Haven't you also had the experience that the busier you are, the more effective ways you find for practicing? Gelmetti, he was teaching us exactly in this. He said, he was always saying, I treni passano, the trains pass. And everyone has the chance once to jump on such a train. It's up to you whether you will jump on it or not. So are you prepared for it or not? And all our lessons with him were always around this concept of you need to be ready anytime. And when we would, have lessons, and he would say, okay, tomorrow we do this piece, Hindemith, Matis de Mala, and we mastered it's not even on the program, I said, I don't care. Find the scores. There's a library, but the library might have only 1-2 copies. We're like 20 people in the class. Copy, it's not my problem. Study the piece. Tomorrow it's gonna be done. This is exactly what he was preparing us for. This kind of jump-in situation, short notice. And then we would go in the lesson and conduct total superficially, because of course, what can you do in a night? And then he would really take us apart. What is there, the dynamic in this bar? Don't look, and then he would really be strict and said, you're superficial, you're not made for this job, and that kind of harsh environment prepared me for situations later where I wouldn't pity myself, but I would really know how to sit down and learn fast, but also profoundly the material, so that I can stand in front of an orchestra, because those guys have x-rays. They right away see if you're legit or not.
And finally, what gives you hope for your future, or hope for the future of musical arts?
That's a good question. What gives me hope? What gives me hope is that the younger generations are, in a way, I see actually in kids. If you look at kids nowadays, they are pretty early, very wise. When you talk to many children nowadays, especially if I look at my niece or other children, I find it always extremely impressing how wise such young human beings can be. And it gives me hope that they don't let themselves being influenced by the superficiality that is around us, because we are in a world that is very focused on appearance, unfortunately. But looking deep into their eyes, I see that actually there is some kind of wisdom in them, in this upcoming generation, that is impressive. And I hope that they will manage to bring society back more to values.
Boian, thank you so much for being here as part of this conversation, as part of this series, and I wish you much success in your future.
Thank you
so much.
It was my pleasure.
Okay.